In 1929, the First World War has caused the economy to collapse and fascism to spread, so everyone is desperate for a way out. Dr. Ritter and his wife Dora decide to leave Germany and move to the uninhabited island of Floriana in the Galapagos archipelago. Whenever a ship passes by, Ritter sends out letters to tell the world about his reclusive life. His goal is to write a new philosophy that will save mankind from itself. In 1932, inspired by Ritter's search for a better life, Margaret, her husband Heinz, and their son Harry sell all their possessions and also move to Floriana. The family drags half of their things up the hill until they find Ritter and Dora. Heinz shows them a newspaper, explaining that all the letters were published and they've become famous in Germany. Ritter points out he came here to be alone, but still agrees to give Heinz a tour.
Come see my garden. As we are strict vegetarians, this is our main source of food. Nothing about our life here is magic. Do you know how long it took me to clear this brush? 12 months. No lakes, no rivers, nothing. Just two tiny springs that collect the rain. Why did you come?
Then Heinz assures him that they didn't come to the island to have fun. It turns out Harry had tuberculosis, but the family couldn't afford the sanatorium. He's heard that Dora is on her way to fully heal her sclerosis, but Ritter refuses to tell him how because he'll be including it in his manuscript. Meanwhile, Dora chats with Margaret while tending the farm animals and calls her a child bride because of her age difference with Heinz.
Harry is not my son. I'm Heinz's second wife.
Dora then explains that most animals on the island can kill them and that Ritter hates how much she cares for the donkey because he considers loving animals a pointless need for affirmation. Afterward, Ritter takes the family to a cave where they can spend the night. The only water source is a tiny stream. When Ritter returns home, Dora says she doesn't like this family and reminds her husband that they came here for isolation. Ritter removes bugs from her skin while sharing his real plan.
I settled them in the caves.
You're a genius.
For the next few days, the family works hard under the scorching sun to start their new life. Heinz is determined, but it's clear that Harry and Margaret aren't having a good time. At night, they can barely sleep because of all the mosquitoes. They manage to dig a big hole and start a pond, thereby guiding the stream. They even work in the rain, and Harry's breathing problems often get in the way. One night, Heinz wakes up from another weird dream. Margaret takes the chance to tell him she's pregnant and Heinz is very happy, but she doesn't like the idea of bringing a baby into this life. Suddenly they hear a noise and Heinz runs to the other cave to discover wild dogs eating their supplies. He quickly scares them off, but it's too late, they've already eaten most of it.
Hello? Hello, Dr. Ritter. Sorry to bother, but I was wondering if I could borrow your burrow.
Sorry, burrow's occupied.
Margaret tries to do some small talk, but they ignore her. After Margaret leaves, the couple is so pleased to know that the family is suffering that they start doing the dirty to celebrate. While the family starts moving their things on foot, they hear a noise on the beach. Ritter hears it too and uses his binoculars to discover that a ship is coming. On this ship, Baroness Eloise gets ready to come out.
I am the embodiment of perfection.
Her lovers Rudolph and Robert carry her to the beach while her servant Manuel brings out her enormous fancy wardrobe. She looks around for the perfect spot and announces that's where they'll build their own resort. Then she and her lovers run to celebrate by getting naughty in the sea while Manuel has to scare the wild dogs off. Moments later, Eloise and her men visit the couple. They even bring a chair for Eloise and she expects Dora to kiss her hand, but Dora just lazily shakes it. Ritter comes out of the bedroom without bothering to put on any clothes. Eloise calls him a tamer of nature and tells him how he's famous in various countries, even known as the future of civilization. Since Eloise is planning to camp on the island, Ritter tells her about the closest source of water. Soon Heinz and Margaret find Eloise and her men swimming in their pond. Rudolph gets aggressive while Margaret explains that the pond is their drinking water, so Eloise makes him back off and apologizes.
My sincere apologies. I was in a desperate need to get the salt off my body.
After Heinz kisses her hand, she tells them about building a resort on the beach. She announces she'll use their pond until her men build a well and hands them some mail before leaving. Some of the letters are for Ritter, so Heinz takes them to him. Ritter gets angry because the envelopes are open and explains that Eloise could have given him the letters herself. She didn't do so to make it look like Heinz opened them, so Ritter points out that this is war. Afterward, Heinz goes to see Eloise, who has caught a wild dog for security. Heinz asks why she tried to turn him against Ritter, so Eloise points out that Ritter started it. He sent her to Heinz's pond to make them fight until they leave. Then she shows him a newspaper article about her resort, which will be exclusively for millionaires. A few days later, Eloise passes by Ritter's house.
Good morning, Doctor. Pig?
What did you say? Say it to my face. Come on. Say it to me now.
Pig, 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 pig.
Pig.
At the same time, Heinz finds a cow and chases after it until they reach the caves. With Margaret's help, They lock the cow up and celebrate that they now have milk. By springtime, Heinz is halfway done with an actual house and Margaret manages to get their first real vegetable. Eloise shows up with her men and announces they'll be camping next to them until the resort is ready. Margaret tells her that she's pregnant, so the baby will need peace and quiet. However, Eloise says that babies need community too and promises hospitality. That night Eloise parties with her men in her tent, annoying the family with their noises. One morning Ritter discovers that the pig has eaten all his vegetables. Later while he's showering, he hears a gunshot. It turns out Heinz has a rifle and is using it to hunt. Eventually Ritter decides to visit the family and is disappointed to discover that they're actually doing pretty well. The house is finished and their plants are flourishing. He offers some chickens in exchange for a cow head and Heinz does the exchange. Margaret asks Ritter if he'd help her when the baby comes but Ritter snaps, going on a philosophical rant and saying that it won't end well. That night Ritter cooks the cow head. Dora points out they're supposed to be vegetarians and could live off the fruits from trees until the garden grows again. An argument ensues and they both blame each other for not doing enough. In the meantime, Rudolph keeps digging holes all over the island but can't find a spot with clean water. When he returns to the camp, he has to hear Eloise get naughty with Robert, which has been bothering the family too. Eloise asks for a meal and Rudolph has to inform her that there are no supplies left. This makes her freak out because she only eats things from home. Rudolph yells at her as she blames her for not planning properly, so Eloise runs to cry in the woods. She's found by Harry, who has to hear her talk about believing in yourself. She convinces him to run with her and Harry is excited because his bad breathing never lets him do that. When they're done, she gets him to talk and learns that the family still has canned supplies. Sometime later, Margaret is alone in the house and starts feeling contractions. At the same time Robert and Manuel sneak into the cave to steal supplies. Then Margaret leaves the house to yell for help and the guys go inside to keep stealing. Margaret collapses when the contractions get worse and rushes back to the house, so the men are forced to hide. After putting down some sheets, Margaret gets ready to give birth and notices some blood on her underwear. A noise outside gets her attention so she goes out again to search for her husband, and now the men can escape. Smelling the blood on Margaret, wild dogs suddenly surround her and she has to keep them at bay with her broom. In the tent, Eloise complains because the stolen goods aren't enough to survive for long. Manuel tells them about Margaret's situation and wants to help. Rudolph even gets on his side. However, Eloise doesn't let anyone leave, saying they're there only to help her. Then Margaret's water breaks and she starts screaming at the top of her lungs as she gives birth. She has to keep the baby close because the dogs want to eat him. At that moment Harry and Heinz come back and scare the dogs off with gunshots. Margaret thinks the baby is dead, however Heinz pats the child until he cries. Margaret is still weak and passes out. Heinz runs to Ritter to ask for help. Ritter doesn't want to go but Dora forces him to. After a quick check, Ritter notices the placenta is stuck in the uterus, so he removes it using hot water and a spoon. The process is painful but saves Margaret. Manuel is spying on them from the window and brings an update to Eloise, who asks him why he didn't stop the doctor from helping. An offended Manuel says he came as a builder, not to attack people, and calls her evil. The family continues to live in harmony and the fresh air is helping Harry's health. One afternoon Eloise brings Margaret a can of food as a gift for the baby and apologizes for Manuel, saying he was a thief and she's vanished him to the boat. She holds the baby high and invites the family to lunch. Later when Margaret asks Heinz, he refuses to go and doesn't believe the Manuel story, knowing that Eloise is behind the robbery. Margaret changes his mind by pointing out that saying no will anger her and Eloise seems dangerous. During lunch, Eloise sings and dances for everyone, but only Harry likes it. Ritter has to put on his fake teeth to eat and everyone learns that he took out his real ones when he arrived on the island to avoid infections. While Heinz keeps calling every dish stolen, Eloise notices that Dora keeps looking at the baby and tries to talk about the baby's birth, but the guests quickly change the subject. Eloise keeps throwing passive-aggressive comments, making everyone uncomfortable. For a while nobody falls for her bait, but eventually Ritter snaps and explains that Dora can't have children. Feeling exposed, Dora tries to leave, only for the guard dog to block her. Eloise calls the dog and while Dora leaves, Ritter starts yelling that he wants Eloise off his island and threatens to kick her out himself. Suddenly Eloise takes out a gun and shows him some papers from the governor of the Galapagos that say the island belongs to her. Unable to fight her, everyone leaves. When the family gets home, they find Ritter waiting. He offers to give them food in exchange for a rifle. Ritter leaves after the exchange and Heinz asks Margaret about some of the things Eloise said. Margaret has no choice but to admit she only married him because he proposed and she wanted to leave her awful home. That night Ritter shoots the pig that keeps attacking his garden. In summer, a drought comes to the island and the family's pond dries out. Ritter makes great advancements with his writing but eventually hits a writer's block. One afternoon Rudolph begs the family for some food because he hasn't eaten in days. They agree to feed him and in return he shares a secret. Eloise stole everything from the movies, the accent, the mannerisms, her stories, and even the title of Baroness. Her parents kicked her out because she only knew how to shop, so she traveled around Europe for a while. She ran out of money in Paris, where she had to work as a cheap feather dancer. When Rudolph returns to the tent, Eloise is freaking out because she's out of cigarettes. She smells food on Rudolph's mouth and yells at him for befriending the enemy. Rudolph insults her and Eloise slaps him, so he slaps her in return. A furious Robert pushes Rudolph down and beats him up. Sometime later a yacht arrives on the island. Alan is a friend of Ritter's and has brought him some supplies. Since Alan is an explorer and a Hollywood director, he even has his own crew and camera. When Eloise meets him, she thinks she's found the solution to her problems. That night Alan organizes a fancy dinner for everyone. A band plays beautiful music and Margaret cries, so Eloise puts water in her eyes to copy her. Suddenly a volcano erupts on another island and everyone admires the view. Ritter notices that Eloise keeps going after Alan and thinks she'll ruin him, so he moves fast to steal some food from Eloise's supplies. Dora tries to stop him and reminds him of the philosophies they base their lives on, but he ignores her. In private, Eloise tries to kiss Alan, who turns her down. Then Eloise pretends her chest hurts to put Alan's hand over her heart. She says there's only one cure for loneliness and tries to use his hand for pleasure. However, Alan starts laughing and explains he can tell she's not really rich before he leaves. Afterward, Rudolph wonders if Eloise asked Alan to take him away like she promised, but Eloise tells him that Alan will be investing in her resort. Then she notices her boxes are empty. In the morning, she watches Alan leave in his ship and loses all hope. Moments later, Ritter discovers all his supplies were stolen, so he visits the family and asks them to choose sides. Then Ritter and Hines take their weapons and threaten Eloise to try to make her return the stolen goods, so Robert takes out a gun in return. Margaret and Harry run to get in the middle to avoid a bloodshed. A furious Ritter goes home and shoots his typewriter, making Dora very disappointed. He announces he'll go hunting and takes the last supplies for his trip, leaving only rotten stuff for the chickens. Meanwhile, Rudolph is dining with the family. Eloise comes looking for him and Margaret tells him to ignore her, but Rudolph agrees to talk to her. She surprises him by giving him food and clothes, saying he can leave if he wants. He kisses her and asks if there's something he can do before he leaves. Suddenly the family hears a noise and thinks the pig is eating their plants. Hines rushes out with open fire, but when he grabs the lantern he's shocked to discover he's killed Dora's donkey. Rudolph watches all this from the shadows. In the morning, Dora finds her chickens sick and her donkey gone. She goes to see the family and they tell her someone killed the poor animal, but not the details. Dora falls as she grieves and Hines has to help her go back. In private, Hines tells Ritter what really happened and while they argue, they see Robert in the tall grass. While the spy runs away, the men agree they must do something.
You were right. It's time to choose sides.
Since Robert only heard the argument, he tells Eloise that her plan was successful. In the woods, Ritter and Hines find Rudolph.
She made me. She told me I could go home.
When Hines returns home, he asks Margaret and Harry to go to the valley to collect grass to reinforce the roof. Then the men grab the weapons and go to confront Eloise again. Robert immediately starts fighting them and his youth allows him to easily overpower Hines and Ritter. Rudolph stabs Robert's hand with a knife and Robert brings him down to try to stab him back. Hines pulls him back and after some struggle, he continuously stabs him until he dies. Eloise comes out and hugs Hines, saying she's been Robert's victim all along. When nobody believes her, she offers to share the ownership of the island, but Ritter shuts her up with a shot to the head. Margaret hears the shot from afar and gets suspicious. Afterward the bodies are thrown into the sea and the guys agree not to tell the truth to their wives. That night it finally rains again and Margaret comforts Hines while he drowns in guilt. The next morning Rudolph pretends he's found a letter from Eloise that says she and Robert left the island. Dora gets suspicious because Eloise left many things behind. Ritter buys tons of those things from Rudolph so he can have money for the next time a ship comes, revealing he's written to the governor and they'll get a visit soon. Margaret confronts Hines in private and points out that Ritter will probably blame the murder on him when the governor comes, so they need a plan. When Ritter goes home, Dora announces that she's leaving him because he's ruined their cause. Ritter freaks out and grabs some pliers to rip out her rotten tooth against her will. Afterward Dora goes for a walk in the woods and bumps into Margaret, who tells her that Ritter killed Eloise. She tries to warn her that Ritter is dangerous, but Dora doesn't listen. Before they leave, Margaret gives her some healthy chickens. She tells her not to cook her sick ones because the bad meat may infect people too. In the meantime a ship sails near the island. Rudolph immediately jumps into the water and offers the captain all his money until the man throws him a lifesaver. When Dora gets home, she discovers that Ritter is finally writing again. To celebrate, she cooks the sick chickens and lets Ritter eat. She doesn't join him with the excuse that her mouth is still hurting. A few hours later Ritter is in terrible pain and Dora asks the family for help. There's nothing they can do, so it seems Dora only wants witnesses. With his last energy, Ritter curses Dora before dropping dead. In autumn, the governor arrives with a few soldiers. Eloise's murder is in the newspapers and Ritter's last letter said Hines did it. Dora has confirmed the story, however when the governor tells Margaret this, she says that Ritter was murdered too. She explains that the food poisoning was caused by sick chickens and that she gave Dora healthy ones the day before, so Dora made a conscious choice. The governor ends up arresting Dora instead. Before leaving, he asks the family if they want to come, but Margaret assures him they're happy to be alone. This is all based on a true story. Eloise's and Robert's bodies were never found. Dora published a book about the events on the island before dying in 1943 of sclerosis. Margaret published her own book contradicting everything Dora said. Rudolph never made it to the mainland because the boat ran out of fuel and drifted off. His body and the captain's were found later. Margaret lived on the island until her death in 2000 when she was 96. Her descendants still live today and run a small tourist hotel. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.